At this moment in the history of humanity, there are voices. They're all clamoring for our attention, and they all want us to do exactly what they say. Sometimes these voices are not qualified to speak in the area that they so expertly and so loudly announce, pronounce, and pontificate that it is surprising that so many people follow voices that don't know what they're talking about. In one of his parables, Jesus said, "If the blind lead the blind." And for years and years, even decades, I thought that the blind could not lead. But guess what? I was wrong. The blind can lead. Who can they lead? I'm glad you asked. The blind can lead the blind. It was at the baptism of John that Jesus came. And the Bible says, after much chit-chat with John and Jesus, John talking about the latchet of whose shoes I'm not worthy to unloose. And Jesus said, "Allow it to be so now that we can fulfill all righteousness." And then when John baptized Jesus, there was the opening of the heavens, and a voice from heaven spoke and said, "This is my beloved Son, hear ye him." Those last three words are very telling. God was the one speaking from heaven, and he wanted us to know and to be keen and aware as to who we should hear. Hear ye him, speaking of Jesus, who had come up out of the water when the dove descended upon him and he was filled with the Spirit and led out into the wilderness. Let me ask you a very pointed question. Who are you hearing? Who are you listening to? Whose voice are you listening to and then doing what that voice says? Or whose voices are you listening to and then adhering to those voices? Are you listening to the Lord, or are you listening to men, mere men? Listen to what the book says. "Do not forsake the assembling of yourselves together, as the custom of some is, so much the more as you see the day approaching. Do not neglect the house of God." But what do the voices of the modern day prophets tell us? Neglect the house of God. Don't go to the house of God. Stay away from church, re. And it is surprising that a church that has served the Lord faithfully for hundreds of years, denominations, organizations, instead of listening to God's voice, they're listening to the voices that tell them, don't go to church. I am shocked with amazement at how easy the church acquiesced to all the voices that spoke to them during this critical time in human history. The voice of God was not listened to. The voice of God was not obeyed. Church folk obeyed people that didn't even know what they were talking about. Today, everybody is a medical expert, and their mother and grandmother too. "This is my beloved Son. Hear ye him." Who are you listening to? Whose voice are you paying attention to? Whose voice are you obeying? And this question that I'm asking, who are you listening to, is pointed to folks that claim to know Jesus Christ and that used to go to church faithfully days without number. Let me ask you, church folks, what happened? What happened? All right.